Hi, this is Karen with Karen's Cards and More, and today I wanted to, I was playing with different backgrounds, so today's card is going to feature a different type of background technique than you've seen me do in the past. So let's talk about what I used for this card. So to start with, you're going to need a basic white cardstock, and this is the traditional size, 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. And then I used, let's look at the stamp set and the die set. So the stamp set that I'm using, there's two of them. I wanted to feature the Hydrangea Haven, the full hydrangea. So that's from the Hydrangea Haven stamp set. And then I wanted a sentiment that was just a line. And these were too bulky, and the ones that would fit, they were too small. So I chose to use a sentiment from the Pansy Patch, A Little Hello From Me to You. So this is the Pansy Patch stamp set, and I'm using a sentiment from there. And then I'm also using the Stitched Rectangle dies. I used the second largest one to cut a piece of black cardstock. And then we're going to use the third largest one, which is here. We're going to use that to cut our background piece. But we're going to go ahead and do the work to it first so that we can choose what part of it that we want to die cut and use on our card. So we're not going to die cut this piece right yet. We're just going to go ahead with the technique. Okay, so I just have a scrap of basic white that I'm going to use for this technique, and I'm going to move our finished card out of the way. So here's the secret tool that I used for this. I used bubble wrap, and this is the kind with the little bubbles. You could probably use the larger bubbles if you wanted to, but I thought this would make a really cool effect. And, you know, like any bubble wrap, some of the bubbles are still there, some of them are popped. That's okay. I like the interest that that gives to the card. So what I did for my background is I'm using the Stampin' Write markers. I didn't try it with the Stampin' Blends, but they are alcohol based, and I wanted to use these because these are water based. You could use your ink pads, especially if you had the ink cubes, the ink spots. Those would be really easy to put some ink down on this, but I just used the Stampin' Write markers because it makes it really easy to get me some color down. So I am going to use the brush tip end, and I'm using Pale Papaya, Polished Pink, Soft Succulent, and those are all new in colors. And then I'm adding Misty Moonlight to it. So that's the 4 colors that I'm going to use. So I'm just going to take the brush end. Now you want to keep in mind how wide of an area that you're doing, because you're going to want to spread more ink. The ink you put down, you want to be wider than that, okay? So I'm just going to do a wide patch here. And I'm just going to spread some of each color. Next, I'm going to go in with the Polished Pink. And I'm not measuring that I get all these the same size. I'm not really worried about that. I'm just spreading some color. Getting all 4 colors down. You could do less colors. You could do this even with 1 color. If you just wanted to use 1 color, you could do that as well. You could do a pattern. You could just do whatever you wanted to do. So now I'm just going to hold this over it to make sure, and yeah, I've got that entire space covered. So the next thing that I'm going to do is, this is the Mister. The Stampin' Spritzer is what it's actually called. And I'm just going to hold this above it, and I'm just going to squirt some water. This is why you want one of the ones that activates with water instead of the Stampin' Blends that activate with alcohol, okay? So then I'm just going to lay this down. This is my basic white cardstock, and I'm just going to press that down. Now I have a piece of cardboard that came out of the back of one of my papers, and I'm just going to lay that down. And then I have this that I use, and I'm just going to kind of just go over it to smush it down on those bubbles. And I'm just going to go back and forth a couple times. And then I'm going to pull this up. And there's our, and you can see that looks very different than what I did before, but that's okay. The difference is okay. And I'm just going to use a paper towel and clean the ink off because I'm definitely going to save this to use again. Okay, and I'll set those aside. And I'm going to set this piece aside to dry for a few moments. And another thing that I will be using is I'll be using these black gems to put on the side. And I don't want to stamp my greeting yet until I see about placement, see what I'm going to do. So what you can do if you're wanting to hurry this along, you can use your heat gun and just help it dry. So I'm just going to bring in my heat gun. And I'm just going over it to dry it a little bit. Now you can see on this that in some places you get more of the dot look. Other places, it's a different type of look, and I was perfectly okay with that. If you don't like that effect, then you might want to look at your bubble wrap and make sure you're getting in places that have the bubbles intact. But I didn't care for this particular card. So then you can kind of play with this and decide what part of it you want to die cut, what part you want to be in your card. Okay. And I have my die cut machine right here beside me. So I'm just going to be popping this off camera a little bit just to run this through. So there's our piece. And that made our background. It was that easy to make our really cute background. You can use any colors that you like. And like I said, you could use multiple colors. You could use one color, just whatever you like. And the black piece is going to make a matte. And I like that because it makes it really pop out. I feel like it makes the color really pop out. So that's what we're going to be doing. Now, to do the stamping on this, I recommend that you use your Stamparatus. If you don't have a Stamparatus, this is such a great investment. Because this is a polymer stamp set, you're going to want to have the foam mat in. And the reason I say this is so good for this technique is because of this background, you may have to stamp it a couple times. And that's really hard to do, stamping in the exact same place multiple times on your own. So this allows you to stamp it as many times as you need to. So I'm just going to hold this down for a minute, and I may move my magnets depending on where I put my flower. So let me get my flower. I love this hydrangea. I have used it so much. So I'm just going to figure out where I want it, and then I'll bring my magnets back in. think I like it there, so I'm gonna just move that magnet up a little. And I'll put this one along this side. And see, it's got the faux stitching around the outside. And so you just close your lid, and that'll pick up your image that you want to stamp. So I'm just going to turn it so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to come in with my black Memento ink, and I'm just going to stamp this, get the ink on here. Now remember, you can always stamp more than once. Another idea would be to use black embossing powder. If you wanted it to be even more vibrant, you could do that. So I'm just going to close this down. And I like to just put a cloth over it and use my tool. If you watch Gina K, she calls it her Chucky tool. My husband made this one for me, and it just helps me press down on that. And I just use a cloth just because I don't want to scrape up the top of my Stamparatus. So I don't know that it would, but I always protect it just in case. Okay, so I could leave it with that, and we'd have a pretty image. And I know that I have my image sideways in the camera, but I wanted to make sure that you could see me stamping it. So now I want to stamp it again because I want that to be darker. So I'm just going to come back with my black ink again, and I'm just going to ink this up. And I'm going, almost got my finger in it. I'm going to do the same process again. I'm just going to close that and put my cloth on there and just take my tool and go over it. And lift it back up, and I'm liking that. That's plenty dark enough for me. You could always do it a third time if you want it, but I'm perfectly fine with that. I think that looks great. So I'm gonna move my Stamparatus out of the way. I'm gonna move this tool out of the way, and I'm ready to put this together. And now I'm gonna bring the Stamparatus back in a moment, but I wanna kind of see how this is going to go together before I stamp my sentiment. So I'm going to come with my liquid glue. You could use your Stampin' Seal, that would be fine too. And I'm just going to get a lot of glue on the back here, not too much. I don't want it oozing out, but I do want it to be covered. And then I'm going to just line this up. Sometimes if I line it up on the long edge, it works better for me. Whatever you need to do to line it up. Just like that. Now I'm going to bring in my card base because I want to get an idea. I'm going to put this closer to the top than to the bottom so I have room for my sentiment. So I'm going to bring my Stamparatus back in, and I'm just going to clean off my stamp a little bit because I want to be able to pull this off. Okay, now I'm going to stamp my greeting. So to show you what I'm going to do, if I try to stamp it this way, this is going to go here. If I try to stamp it this way, I can't close my Stamparatus. So I'm just going to turn it this way. So I'm just getting an idea. I want to try to make that straight. Just trying to get an idea about where I'm going to put this, because I want to kind of just lay my sentiment underneath and kind of center it there. And this allows me to get a pretty good idea of where I need that sentiment to go. So I think right in there is going to be good. Okay, so I'm just going to close that and get it on the lid. I'm going to move my flower image, and I'm just going to put my other magnet on just to hold it. And I'm going to come in with the black Memento ink, and I'm going to ink this up. And I'm just going to put that down like that. And I like that. I don't need to re-stamp it. So I'm just going to remove this. And so I'm ready to come in with our matted piece. And I can center that however I need to. Just like that. And I ran out of Stampin' Seal, so I'm gonna have to resort back to my ATG gun. This doesn't hold quite as well as the Stampin' Seal, but in a pinch it'll work. Okay, so I want to make sure I'm centering it at the bottom. Make sure the sides are straight. Give that a press down. Then I'm going to come in with my black gems, and I'm just going to center these on the side. You could put them, I'm going to do 3. You could put them all up and down the side. You could just do them right towards the center. Whatever you want to do. I just try to line them up with each other. I didn't want to put too many embellishments. I wanted the embellishments to be kind of simple because I wanted the focal point to be that background that I spent the time to create. So that easy. We have a card that really is special because you didn't just cut the paper. I mean, it's fun to use the designer series paper and let it speak for the card, but in this case, you have a unique card because you created the background yourself, and it's going to look different depending on what colors that you use. I'm going to bring in my original. As you can see, I used different colors for it. I didn't use the pale papaya. I used one of my other pinks, so it looks a little different. This one's darker. This one's a little more muted. So they're going to look different every time, and that's okay. That's the beauty of creating, is that it's going to look unique every time. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you'll get your bubble wrap out and play a little bit. Try the small circles, try the big circles, and see what you come up with. And I will look forward to crafting again with you soon. If you are new to my channel, hit the subscribe button below and the notification bell. You'll be notified every time I upload a video. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. Check me out on Facebook. I have a page and a group, Karen's Cards and More. If you would like to order any of the Stampin' Up! Products that I used here today, you can do that over at my website, karensmith.stampinup.net. If you don't have a demonstrator, I'd be thrilled to help you with that. So I look forward to seeing you again soon.